Okay. Hey, Sondre, good to see you.
See you. Good to be here.
Yeah, I shall shortly introduce Sondre. He's a friend of me, a fellow Y Combinator batch. He's the CEO of SafetyWing, who's building a safety net to the internet. Shortly about the Red Circle, maybe we are an organization that's spreading psychological literacy. We want to help people with mental skills for everyday life. And yeah, basically we'll go over an interview. Maybe Sondre, if you could shortly intro yourself.
Yes. Yeah, so my name is Sondre. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SafetyWing, which, yes, we're building a social safety net for the internet and eventually maybe a country on the internet. Previously, I also founded another company called Superside, which was a freelancer platform. So I've been in the sort of internet work world for many years now. And before that, I was a policy advisor for the government of Norway, which is my home country.
Okay. Also a digital nomad for a while.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah, maybe to really get started, like we're all now in the crisis working at home. I know already a few years ago we had discussions about remote. I was then pretty much against it, I remember, but now, yeah, working remote myself. I was wondering, yeah, I'm struggling like now a bit with the time zones, also working for American company, and you guys are also in different time zones, like the work-life balance, like how do you schedule your day? I'm very curious, like do you have any routines or concepts how you schedule your work and private life, working remotely and often at home?
Yeah, the main one I have, personally do a lot on that. I think everyone can do more of. That has helped me a lot. Is prioritization. The other is to have there's this great Paul Graham essay called "Makers Hours, Managers Hours," which is that basically makers need more like time to do focused works, and managers have like a series of emails, and it's important to kind of keep the makers hours separate so that you don't do that. So to give some examples of how you can implement these two things, how we've done it. So to preserve hours, it's to have like core time where you can put meetings, and you have like meeting free days. It's fairly straightforward. So like we have 8 to 11 a.m. PST, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's where you can put meetings for the whole team, and that also overlap with European and US time zone, which then becomes in the afternoon in Europe. And then when it comes to prioritization, we do these sort of group prioritizations called planning and prioritizations, where people list ideas they think for themselves. We list all the ideas, we rate them on complexity and efficiency, and we only do the top ones. And that has been particularly useful now where the environment has changed quickly. There's a huge productivity boost to be had without working more, just by prioritizing better. And I hear people say things like, I don't have time to prioritize because I have to do all my tasks in random order. Like, they don't say it like that, but that's kind of what they're implying. Like the social pressure to work faster is so strong that I feel like, but of course it's the other way around. Like, they think they can address their stress by doing all their tasks in a sort of frantic random order. But in fact, certain tasks stress them much more. And if they would only take the big time at the beginning of the day, the beginning of the week, before you log on to your email to list your tasks and find out what the top ones are and start with that, you will find that actually reduces your stress. That's where the holy grail is. So that's my personal take on that.
Yeah. So if you take it down to an individual level, like I know many friends of me, for example, they leave the phone in flight mode to do a few making hours or deep work, and then later after lunch you switch into the meeting. Like, how do you do it on a personal level, your prioritization or your working?
There are a couple of steps that I have together. So it's very simple. So I use lists. I've tried one other thing that works for some, which is blocks. I use lists, which means that lists and goals. That's kind of the two concepts I use personally. Goals means I once every 6 months or something, I update my goals. That's like yearly goals in various categories, 3-year, 5-year life things. And then I make plans. Plans is like steps to reach a goal, and at a similar interval. And then I have some near-term goals, which is usually just a few, like 3. And then I put the actions to reach the plans that goes into my list. So then we're back to like a weekly exercise. I just use this tool called Habitica, and but it's not particularly good. It's just that I started using it and I kept with it. And then I put the tasks into that, and I have to do a certain amount of tasks every week. Otherwise dollars get deducted from my bank account. So
Really?
yeah, this other tool called BeMinder that I set up and very enlightened day many years ago, which have helped me a lot. So
pressure that money, like I know many funds in the value do it indeed, that money gets literally deducted if you don't do the task.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And then there is one related daily exercise, which is to, in the shower, I just kind of try to ask myself, think about, what's the most impactful thing I can do that day. And I make sure to do that, at least that one. And because there is this 80-20, like everyone has heard this, like 80-20 Pareto distribution. There is definitely a Pareto distribution in the effect of actions. Some of the actions make almost all the difference. And if you make sure to do the high impact one, you can be so inefficient with the rest of your time, I've found. So it's like, if you want to be lazy, do this method. Start with the most impactful things, because then you will get like 80% of the output completed. And then you can be really flexible with the rest of your time. So that's how I do it personally.
Yes. If you walk me through a day, like you wake up, you take some personal time, then work, or how?
Yeah. I wake up. I always listen to usually something in the morning. That can be learning or inspiring. So that it could be like a podcast or like an audiobook. That was also a habit I discovered that came from this psychological insight about addiction, which was that when you do something, there are these chains that are connected in events. So like if you take heroin, right, the thing you did right before heroin is like rewarded, but the square of the last action, and then it just goes in a chain, and in those chains can be like pretty random things, like saying like fuck it, or calling that friend or something. And I just thought that was so interesting. So I thought, I wonder if I could do that in a positive way. And so I kind of rescheduled it by looking, what did I do right before I did something very useful? And I found that this was it. I'd done this, listened to something, some kind of new idea, some kind of thing that, especially like something that was uplifting, right? Not reading about the Holocaust necessarily, but like philosophy or some science, something that give me ideas I can apply. And so I just thought, okay, but what if I just do that every day at the beginning of the day? And that was brilliant. That was a brilliant insight. So I started doing that every morning, and that's really helps actually to put me on a positive state of mind. And and then I just get to work quite quickly. So in the morning, I shower, I listen to this thing, 30 minutes, breakfast, and then I have some idea of the most impactful thing. And then I start to work. I aim for the 0 inbox thing for the day, but I try to limit when in the day I do communication stuff. 0 inbox, I can highly recommend that. That was another you can do 0 inbox too. You just archive all your emails first, and then you have a 0 inbox, and then it's just to keep it that way. I do meetings in the morning. That's mostly because of this core hour stuff I mentioned. And then on Friday, I do this strategic thinking writing day.
Like you really take time off from meetings and the busy work as a CEO, and you just focus on creative work.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's mostly my day, and then typical day: morning meetings, afternoon production, getting through the tasks, emails, and then work out, which is now in Corona times. I go for walks or like do exercises on the roof. So
because
I don't think there's any. I have some like more obscure habits I'm trying to practice, but they're kind of like weird. I definitely do some writing every day. I do some meditation and prayer. I think that's great. I reflect every night, which is kind of going out and don't tell anyone, but oh gosh, I like having a snooze or a cigarette. Very embarrassing, actually. But and then I reflect on the day or on my life. That's another thing I do at the end of the day. So these are all like I would say the normal things.
So, question from the public already, a follow up. Like you talked about zero inbox. People were wondering, like, is it a name, a concept? Can you online find something more about it?
Yeah. It's a concept. It's a way to handle your emails. So, and I this is not a recent. I did this like just a year ago. So I definitely know it's not to not have zero inbox, and zero inbox is preferable. It's a concept. If you Google it, you'll find ways to do it. But I'll just explain it briefly. So zero inbox means that the way you manage your inbox is by having zero things in it over time. And how do you do that? You start by literally archiving everything in your inbox. And then every day, what you do is you aim to get to zero inbox. And how do you get things out of the inbox? Well, you either respond to them, or you can kind of snooze them, or you can move them over on your to-do list, in which you can also archive them. But the point is, and if you have to respond that you haven't yet, then they're still in your inbox. So the only emails you will then have in your inbox are things you are yet to respond to. The lovely thing about this, it creates this feeling of being done that I never got before I implemented zero inbox. So if I then are able to get through my emails, it literally says, nothing here, you're done, in my Gmail, which is wonderful. But before, there will be lots of stuff, and I wasn't sure if I was done. Like maybe there was something I forgot, to deal with. So it's a very well way to cap email and create a more sort of clean experience there. So
okay. Yeah, sure. No, thanks. Yeah, I will. Maybe we, as Ratso, can also later put in something in the links. But the zero inbox thing sounds great. One more thing, personal question, then I will jump more to the public questions. I often struggle between a balance between input and output activities, especially at home, and I don't have an office when I had a job, I had to go to the office for mostly output activities, and at home we do input, like reading on philosophy, but also new concepts. Do you have any numbers? Like, I know people like Michael, they track it all, or do you just go by the flow? Like a balance between input and output, especially now I'm working at home, I'm struggling with. Like, do you have any take on that?
Well, I mean, the mistakes, I think there's a lot of way to do that right. The mistakes I see people do is I can't do any input because I have a lot to do. It sounds very similar to I don't have time to do prioritization. Why is that? It's because when you do have input, you use that knowledge to solve your problems. That's the thing. Like, it's not like I read philosophy and then like, oh, what a nice text, and it's like a pleasure. Like, it's not like that. It's not like what I get an insight and I apply it immediately, usually in the form of like some communication, like writing in the co-founder channel, or like writing something, adding a to-do, right? I apply it immediately, and it's very energy giving to get this new idea in, from in the books of the podcast with the smartest people out there, right, who have worked on those problems before. So that's what I do. I apply them immediately, and when they are, then I would say there's more harmony between input and output. The more instantly you apply them, like, so not just be a philosopher, but like a philosopher king, I suppose. Like, you immediately execute on the philosophy that you believe in. So that's kind of one thought on that. As to balance it, like I don't read that much. Like I do when I work out in the morning, sometimes in the evening, but it like in total it's just like an hour a day or something. Like it's not a high amount, and it doesn't interfere with anything really. I can't work as I'm getting ready in the morning, and I can't work when I'm working out or taking walks on the roof. So.
Thank you very much. A question from the public still. What's your biggest challenge working from home? As I understand, for a lot of people, it's now new. Like you at SafetyWing, you've been used probably to working at home. What's your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. I mean, the first challenge is the thing we're talking about, right? Self-management. So many people who have never tried working from home, they're just used to like being sort of this surrounded by the sort of bells and whistles of a physical workplace, that they've never developed the ability to the habits to manage themselves, and they go into this like complete catastrophe mode when they work from home, and that takes some time. I would be forgiving with it. Like I think it takes time for everyone to learn to self-manage, and you gotta also sometimes cycle through many ideas before you find something you like and that works. But self-management is number one, it seems like to me, for almost everyone. Just learning self-management. How am I going to manage today now that nobody's looking over my shoulder? And for a remote company, it's the same. It's like we can't measure input. We can only measure output. So we have to make this like autonomous, responsible culture, which means you have to learn to be an adult. You have to learn to manage yourself, because it's literally impossible for me to look over your shoulder. I can't see when you're coming into work and when you're leaving. I don't think that's ever a good proxy for getting things done, by the way. So I think it's terrible that most companies do that. That the proxy they have for whether someone is doing work is when they're arriving and leaving at work. Well, did you know it's possible to arrive and do nothing all day? Well, actually, it turns out that's actually the standard operating procedure. So, and the solution is you measure output, and but yeah. So that's number one.
How do
Challenge.
you measure output?
How do you measure output? Goals and goal achievement. Goals and completing step towards goals. So, and learning to set and reach goals is, I think, like a fundamental thing. Like it's like the most important thing. Yeah.
How do you do goal selection? Maybe can you elaborate a bit on that? Because once you have a goal, it's clear, and we all know SMART goals and things like that. But myself and friends around me often struggle with the prioritization of goals. Like, what's the best way to come up with the right goals?
The best way to come up with the right goals? Well, I'm telling you, that's like the hardest question. You got to go really deep in philosophy to answer that well. Some of the most credible frameworks that I believe in, is some of them is out of the sort of effective altruism world. Less Wrong has done a lot of great work on that. They have this wonderful word about it in Less Wrong, cost prioritization. But yeah, so to start with some frameworks that are definitely true, is that do the best you can. Like, what is the best thing you can do, right? Like in your life, like what is the most important thing, like the most inspiring thing you can do, the best you can, right? That I think is a very good general framework, and to even have that as like a super goal, like something you evaluate goals based on, because goals will become obsolete as you reach them or the environment changes. So that I find to be one very good framework. Just aim for the best. The other thing is like what inspires you. So there is the thing about dreams, like when I was like a teenager, I had this realization, which I think was so clever, which was that dreams made me keep going, but all adults seem to stop dreaming. So how do I solve that? I have to promise myself to never stop dreaming in a way. And what is dreaming? Dreaming is this thing about imagining a worthy goal. It's imagining like a better future that would be worth going to. So that is, I think, the second part of the equation, like what's the best? And then another framework is what would actually motivate you? Like what would feel worth it? Like what is like, Mark Andreessen has this great, when he was active on Twitter, he says like huge if true to like these like questionable tweets that probably weren't true, but like what would be if it were the case? What would actually be really cool? And then of course it's like the last part is your particular ability. Like, so if you're good at something, and you'll just, something will be natural to you, right? Like I'm actually not that bad at dreaming. I'm not that bad at writing. Those are a couple of things. So in whatever I do, I should probably use the things that I'm good at, that I'm naturally interested in and naturally talented at, because if you just think about the whole population, there seems to be this like variety of skills people have through genetics and maybe also the accidents of their past experience. But it means that you have this particular ability, and if you make the full output of that realized, like the full potential, Nietzsche has this great line, like become who you are. If you make fully realize the outer edges of your particular skills, natural skills, then you maximize the impact you can have, like in theory, right? So those three, like what motivates you, what is the best thing that can be done, and what are you good at? And the intersection of those three, that's a good goal.
Yeah, thanks for the elaboration. Something maybe, yeah, don't know, fully related to it. We also, people are struggling with mental health and also loneliness, especially as I know some people from Paris and Italy, and like they are really isolated. And I think in your team, like, I don't know, you maybe live together, but also people are probably now alone or have been alone before as a digital nomad. Like, any tips on dealing with the loneliness? Like, do you, of people you know who are digital nomads who have been maybe also alone a lot in new countries, like probably you have seen it all before, like any tips on dealing with the loneliness that might come of not having your colleagues around or not even your friends? Like, any pointers in that direction?
Yeah. So if we're quarantine or general remote, I have different answers here. So in general remote, what you build up is that you essentially build a social circle that's not your work. You build a sort of social habits that is not your workplace, and that is actually superior once you get it up and running. But that's separate from quarantine. In quarantine, one beautiful part of this period is all the creativity that seems to have gone into making online analogs of, digital analogs of ways to socialize. And that has really flowered over the last month. And I've been a part of many of them, and some of them are odd and some of them are really cool. But they do definitely work in that regard. So to share some that I have tried and that I really enjoyed, playing games with people online it's exploded, and I love it. Like, and also like for people who don't usually play games online, like simple games with like a couple of other couples.
Any recommendations on names people could Google and try for themselves?
I have this one, but I can't remember what it is. It's this drawing game. Is there like some kind of notes I can mention? But
Jackbox, maybe?
Might be. Jackbox. Okay. It's like a drawing game, and then people guess what it is, and it's amazing. It's always funny. We had, I would say it was moderately quite successful with the dinner over thing. Also, couples, I don't live alone, but you could definitely do that, where we're like literally having wine and eating dinner, but it was on video. That went surprisingly. I thought that was going to be awkward, but you forgot about being on video 5 minutes in. and it was very similar to doing it live in experience. So that I would say it was much better than feared. So might wanna try that out. And then the last things, this goes now into really awkward territory, but we have this piano here. Shell, this guy who currently lives there, plays the piano. They have been also part of this Burning Man camp, had this like party, and they were like dancing in front of the camera. Apparently they said that was super fun. Sounds really awkward to me, but it seems like maybe this can work. So that's the three I would mention at various different levels of extreme awkwardness for quarantine. This is not for normal remote work. This is for quarantine. And please take the initiative, by the way. Like in each of these things, someone took the initiative. Everyone it's lonely because none of these things happen on their own, which means that someone has to take the initiative. Someone has to invite for that thing and take the risk of the social awkwardness, but everyone is happy afterwards. So that is like, if you're lonely, like take the initiatives. Like, how about you invite someone?
Yes. Yeah, I remember. Maybe, and then I go to public questions. One thing that comes up, like you read a lot of philosophy, thought about societies and extrapolating societies to the future. Do you have any ideas on how it will be different, like post-corona? Like I hear people saying like, oh, we figured out staying at home might actually be good. I feel less pressure to go to parties, or I stay more in touch with friends all over the world now. So I'm
Yes.
less interested in my local friends, or still like them, but I'm less place bounded. I will try to build a more international group of friends. Like, do you have any ideas on how post-corona society will have changed?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're kind of taking many trends, and this I think is also like, if you think about a framework of how to think about things will change. This has advanced many trends that were already happening. And that's, I think, pretty certain and obvious. And a lot of those are things you already know, like working remotely or buying things online. Also some like kind of obscure programming, like or product trends, like spatial spatial apps, like apps where you move around physically in a 2D or 3D map. And I think also the second order effects from that, like people moving online and people moving remotely, which is that countries and borders starts mattering less. Like that's an interesting thing, is that there is this like shutdown of borders, but in a way we're all moving online, which is its own city.
Yeah, like
And,
this. No.
Yeah. So in a way, borders are suddenly like becoming a kilometer tall, and in another way, we're suddenly just moving to the internet and becoming this global. So I do think that will happen, and that will accelerate many of the things that are, you can read about in the book Sovereign Individual, which is that, which a lot of SafetyWing is built on the idea that will happen. Not from that book, but we have our own version of it. But essentially that as people work online, they discover that they can move around. Or maybe not right now, but when the quarantine is over, if you have a remote job, you can move. You can shop around for a city or a country the way you would buy for a product, and that will cause cities and countries to behave more like products, as you use tools like Nomad List to find the ideal city match.
Mm-hmm.
And it will also, and that means that the cities and countries that behave more like products will win, because you can't just use force anymore. Because if you're like a particularly annoying country, people will just say like, F you, like, I don't need this anymore because I actually have my livelihood and my social networks online anyway, and I don't need to live here anymore. So that I think, and then of course opens up the possibility that someone like a tech startup can build something like a country on the internet, which I think is a very worthwhile thing to do right now, as the old structures are collapsing and we need to build new infrastructure on the internet. So that I think will be accelerated. So I would say before I probably would say like remote default 10 years in the future. Now it's like 2 to 4 years. Everything that will be remote can be remote, will be remote in 4 years time.
Yeah. Will Charlotte is Peter Thiel still doing this startup island thing, or is that completely gone? Like, do you know anybody who's building country on the internet?
So you mean sort of charter city, or like it's like island? What is it called? Yeah, I know what you mean. Like set up some kind of island, and it's like a new country
And international coast, yeah.
Yeah. I don't. I'm not familiar with the latest development in that. I am familiar that there has been progress in charter cities, which is related concepts of policy experimentation. There is this. So that's, and there have been progress. I can't remember which country it was. There was one country in East Africa that is made through legislation to make a real charter city experiment. So I'm curious to see how that will work out. But I don't actually think that's more country on the internet. Country on the internet is more a new version of country that is digital, based on membership instead of borders. They might have like some physical presence, like embassies, but not necessarily. That will be less relevant than the digital presence. That's how I think it will be.
A very interesting take, and yes, probably might accelerate SafetyWing even quicker, hopefully. Also, other questions that people have: idea generation. Like, often we brainstorm with people with or without a whiteboard, or we do meetings, and as you have maybe more asynchronous communication or less company meeting, like, how do you do best idea generation remote? And both, if you maybe have a meeting like this online, or if you have separate time zones so you're not in it together.
Yes. This is one area where I think you can do it better online than in person. And we have found a great way to do that. Firstly, we use a video conferencing tool called Sokoko. Tandem is another one. But what I really like about Sokoko, which is not that good in some other ways, but it's that thing that you can see from two, like you see a map on top and you can see who is in different rooms. It's your office and you can see like, oh, there's Sarah over there in that room, and I can go knock on the door. And then there's video and audio when I go into the room.
Sokoko, or like a
Sokoko. Socco.
Okay.
So what Sokoko is great at is also allows you to do certain exercises easier. Like when we have these brainstorm meetings, we will then go into small groups, which is very easy in Sokoko because you can just like move out in small groups and then return to Albatross, as our main room is called. So we often do this format called, that I actually already mentioned, called planning and prioritization. And that the meeting goes like this. We have some kind of goal or problem or next quarter that we want to solve. Everyone starts by brainstorming themselves, because as you know, the research on crowdsourcing shows, if you hear, you want people to think for themselves first, because if not, they'll just echo what the first person says, unconsciously, which is very unfortunate. So we always start by everyone like thinking for themselves, come up with 10 ideas on your own in your own notebook. So like break time. And then you go into small groups and discuss them and kind of rewrite them in a way that is legible. So that's the small group portion, like another half hour, groups of 3, 4, discuss them. And then we return to big group, and then it's all in a sheet and everyone ranks all the ideas, rates all the ideas. Then we also and they rank that in secret, which is again that getting that independent thought into the ratings. So everyone rates all of the ideas, and then that's aggregated and used to rank all the ideas. I find this fantastic way to generate ideas, very creative, and everyone's ideas and knowledge gets aggregated in this way. So easy to copy. All you need is a tool like Sokoko and a Google Sheet.
And equal level, like founders, employees, everybody.
Absolutely, everyone's vote is the same. I mean, that also is our particular culture, I suppose, we definitely try to aim for the fact that it doesn't matter who said something. What matters is whether it's better or true. But that's the constant battle. But yeah, no, definitely in the ratings that ideal is implemented, every vote counts the same.
Yeah. I think we should also wrap up soon in a few minutes. Maybe if I may close with any things you have pointers on regarding of mental health that you would think are very important now, or just general things I didn't ask about, or maybe related to depression and finding meaning, like a lot of people are now or lonely, or just in general, like any things you think could help towards this topic that we haven't discussed.
Yeah. No, I mean, I am definitely on the, there is this whole neo-trad movement happening that I think is very cool in this regard. And I do think that, especially us sort of living in San Francisco, going to Birmingham, trying to be at the edge of society, we're finding that many of the lessons in tradition and religion are solutions to problems that we need to understand and implement again and translate into the new world. So that has been particularly helpful for me. I when I was younger, I had this like disdain, this like anarchy, complete disdain of authority and tradition. And now I find that more as like this treasure chest of insights that people have figured out, often in an evolutionary way, like very painfully through trial and error. They've stumbled across these like equilibrium solutions, like taking one day a week off, right? It's like, why do you keep the Sunday holy? Well, it's because it's actually really good for you to rest one full day a week. And if you don't do it because you have a lot to do, you lose, you get less productive. There's so many reasons to do it. So that's would be my sort of general push. Is like we're kind of a generation that have forgotten everything that are like the previous generation, like a few generations ago, knew about. But because a lot of it was written down, we have the possibility to rediscover it and implement it in our own lives. That I think is also very important in this mental health stuff, because at least for me, some things in mental health like purpose and community, they're so obvious, like there are solutions to this. Our ancestors solved this problem. Like we can just re-implement the same thing in a new, modern, translated format, and then we will be okay again. So that would be my very general pointer there. I think that's the direction the solution lies in.
Yeah, I would love to go, but that would probably conversation knowing us for hours into purpose and how to find these things. And
yeah,
very curious, but guess that's for another time. I'm looking like for my team, any more final questions? And otherwise, I think might be good to wrap up. Like a bit about us, the Red Circle. Indeed, we gave these workshops in Palo Alto about to talk about mental health issues for everybody. Also on suicidal thoughts, like how do you check with friends if they have suicidal thoughts? How do you respond to that? And yeah, we're working on expanding that. I might be advising the company, like it's not sure yet how this all will work out, but it's been a great initiative. Any things you want? We have now public listening. They could help with SafetyWing, or anything that any message that you would want to close with or request?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely if you, I mean, I don't usually, if you're looking for health insurance anywhere in the world and you're a remote team or individual, we have that. So that's our current product, and the other thing is to take initiative to be social with others, because many other people might need it, but you can take the initiative. So I guess that would be my only last two notes.
Maybe then help you a bit on the sales. But I'm just curious, if people sign up now I know people moved to New Zealand, friends of me all, and they signed up with you guys. Like, do you have corona protection worldwide? Like, if I would be in a country now and would have to be put on a ventilator.
So for remote health, right, which is the more premium product, but if you go to our website, you will see it. The answer is yes. So corona is covered in a very complete way, as you can see there with remote health. So if that's what you're looking for, then yes, that is the answer to that.
Okay. Yeah, I hope everybody listening, please follow us on Facebook or give us a like. We'll plan to do this more and more often. We'll also evaluate what people thought about this. And we understand it for everybody a bit adjustment, mostly the people who were not used to working remote before. It was great to talk to an expert in this, experienced person. Hope to see you soon in real life in San Francisco again when all the travel bans are lifted. And then, it was great chatting to you, and say hi to the rest of the team from me, and see you soon.
Thanks, Yuri. This was great.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.